Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Uncultured Cinematic Universe. Here we discuss your favorite movies of all time, as well as the ones that got away. We look at classic and iconic films from two perspectives, that of the diehard fan and that of the uncultured who's never seen it before, until now. We're your hosts, Joe and Justin, here to act as your guides, playing part as both the fellow enthusiast and the ignorant and uncultured. Today we'll be setting sail for adventure and riches on the high seas with our best friends, and maybe along the way developing trust issues for parental figures. It's 1996's Muppet Treasure Island. Let's get into it.
Yay. I want to know more about that last line. Trust issues with parental figures? Is it because Tim Curry turns out to be the bad guy?
That's exactly why. How many? Okay, so Muppet Treasure Island.
Muppet Treasure
Obviously
Island.
based on Treasure Island, which is based on Robert Louis Stevenson's brain. How
Correct.
many iterations of Treasure Island have you viewed or consumed? Have you ever read the book or anything like that?
No, and so I'm very surface level familiar with Treasure Island. I don't know how much of it is rooted in fact or fiction, that kind of stuff. This is a very specific call out in memory that I have specifically around this movie. And it involves you. I think this was
Mhm.
like 2 or 3 years ago when we were working in person. Remember those days when we were used to work in the same building
For those who
together?
don't know, Justin and I used to work together.
As if you couldn't infer from what I was talking about. Um,
I like to let the viewers know.
yeah, we got to let them know. So uh, at that time, Ryan and I were watching Black Sails, a premium television. I think it's on Showtime.
That's the Stars show, right?
Yeah, I think it was Stars or Showtime, one of those Game of Thrones style, a
The
lot
busy
of
one.
sex and boobs and wieners and sword fights and stuff like that, but it's around the story and the lore of Treasure Island, which I didn't know at the time. I was just like, "Oh, cool, it's a pirate show." And Ryan had seen it before and she's like, "It's really awesome." I made her watch all of Game of Thrones and she's like, "Cool, now we're going to do the same thing with Black Sails." So I remember we were in the office one day and we were just talking about whatever we're watching. And I was like, "Yeah, we're watching this show called Black Sails. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it before." And Joe, you go, "Is that the one with Billy Bones and stuff?" And I was like, "Oh, have you seen it? Have you seen it? Because there is a character in there called Billy Bones. It's cool. Have you seen it?" And you're like, "No, I haven't seen it. The only I only know Billy Bones from Muppet Treasure Island." And I was like, "Okay, all right."
Having seen Muppet Treasure Island, you can understand how I would immediately make that connection. The way that these Muppets say Billy Bones.
Billy Bones. But
Oh,
yeah,
Billy Bones.
considering the compendium of everything surrounding Treasure Island,
Hmm.
I haven't touched on a whole lot of books or media or stuff like that. This one and Black Sails have been my only touch point. And actually, incidentally, you and I talked about this earlier today about different various Disney movies and DreamWorks movies. One of them being Treasure Planet,
Hmm.
which I had never seen before, and it just hit me today. I was like, "Oh, is that even based on Treasure Island?" And you said, "Oh boy, it is, but it's in space."
So Treasure Planet, we're absolutely going to have to do as a little mini episode at some point as a
Yeah,
follow up to this because it is this same story. This is kind of the classic pirate story for me.
yeah,
Anytime there's a X marks the spot type map where treasure is buried on an island, you could even call it Treasure Island. It's always stemming from this story for me, in my opinion.
yeah.
So Robert Louis Stevenson writes this in the late 1800s. As far as I know, I don't know how much he's pulling from historical fact, for the names of these people versus they're just purely fictional. But there's been multiple iterations of this story through the years. It's been a movie a million times. Obviously, there's the Muppet version, and there's the Disney version, which they set in kind of a alternative, futuristic timeline, but it's in space, but they're still on a ship with sails. Like that's as much as I'll say. But like the
Okay.
way that they do it is very interesting.
Yeah.
Like, they're dealing with a lot of the same type of stuff that you would deal with at sea, but it's literally just like space, and they just don't really comment on the fact that like there's no air.
Yeah.
So as long as you can like suspend your disbelief for that much, it gets really cool. Like
I
it
don't
is such a cool movie.
I don't know if I can do that,
It
Disney,
was
like,
also
they took one step
unfortunately
too
a
far.
bomb.
Yeah.
So it kind of led to the death of 2D animation across the board. But
I understand that it is kind of like a sleeper cult hit that, like, there
yes,
are, like, hardcore stands for that movie. So, yeah, I'm excited to kinda do that one. Um
I love Treasure Planet, and like kind of circling back to where we started, like every iteration of the story has that Jim Hawkins character and the Long John Silver character, of the eponymous fish restaurant. Um,
Yeah.
and
I was waiting for that the whole time throughout the movie. I was like, "When does he go and start a restaurant and franchises?" I was waiting for
it
it.
starts on that island at the end. Um, but their relationship kind of forms the core of this because he's kind of this terrifying. Long John is kind of this terrifying character because he starts off as this seemingly good guy, but then you realize he's been leader of the crew since the beginning. He was kind of part of the old crew with the aforementioned like Captain Flint who buried
Yeah.
the treasure, and so he's secretly like the one that they fear the most on this boat. But he gets disarmed in a way, and like there's a cool level of character development in the way that his relationship with Jim progresses in each of these iterations of the story. Sometimes
Mhm.
stories kind of lean into it more or less. So like in the Treasure Planet movie, that part is definitely leaned into pretty heavily. How like you don't really know if he's using Jim just to get to the map or if he's actually developing like an actual connection with this little kid, and he's got like a little bit of a heart of gold.
Love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the only example that kind of jumps into my brain. It's a movie I haven't seen, but I know it's been done a lot. But it's
Mhm.
that same kind of dynamic of like um, True Grit. I don't
Mhm.
know if you saw
Mhm.
that, but it's like that. It's kind of like Last of Us, that kind of thing of like a grizzled old person trying to get to a thing, but you got to use the young person, the young
Old guy with a kid.
whippersnapper. Yeah, it's a trope as tale as old as time,
It's a classic combination, and it can't fail.
But yeah, so this was really exciting for me because I'm not too familiar, like I said, with the whole story and the lore of Treasure Island. So I was genuinely surprised
Okay.
to find out that I was like, "Oh, cool! It's like Tim Curry. He's gonna like partner up with this kid," and I was like, "Oh wait, he's the bad guy? Oh no,
Mhm.
oh no!" So like it was, I went
This
along
is
with the journey with the kid.
This is obviously a heavily comedic movie. We're in a Muppet miniseries. We'll get into the Muppets of it all, but like, there's versions of this story that have like kind of like intense scenes when the turn happens, because there's basically like a mutiny at the center of this story,
Right,
and all of the build up to that is Jim developing a relationship with this guy who he then realizes is like the devil on the ocean,
right.
and then there's the fallout from that. Um, but let's back up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We are in Muppet Mayhem, our May miniseries focusing on Muppets,
Yep.
and this is our second and last film in that miniseries, where we are actually focusing on like capital M Muppets. Our
Yeah.
previous film was Labyrinth, which was kind of Jim Henson early to mid years. This movie comes out a few years after Jim Henson dies,
Yep.
but I'll get to the stats. But it's directed by Brian Henson, who is his son. So kind of comes from a puppeteering family. I think Brian Henson also directed the Muppet Christmas Carol as well.
Yep.
So this movie kind of exists at a cross section of Jim Henson's no longer directing, but his son is taking over, and then also like the Jim Henson Company is slowly but surely being acquired by Disney, and
Yep.
you can maybe see that evolution happen, where you have the Muppets existing on the Muppet Show and then into Sesame Street. And then once they get into theatrical films, there's kind of like a trilogy of Muppet movies released in the late 70s and 80s,
Mhm.
where it's the Muppet movie, Great Muppet Caper, I think, and then Muppets Take Manhattan. that are more original stories centering around these Muppets. And then as you get into the 90s, they become more parody stories. And
Yeah.
so you get like Muppet Christmas Carol, Muppet Treasure Island. Muppets in Space isn't really a parody, but it's more just like the
General
Gonzo
trope.
backstory. That's where they really decide to dig in on Gonzo
Yeah.
and figure out what he is. That's a fun one. And then going into the 2000s, they kind of get fully acquired by Disney. There's multiple like television shows, animated shows, and then there's obviously the reboot with the theatrical films a few years back at this point with
Yeah.
the Muppets, and then
Jason Segel and
Jason
Amy
Segel,
Adams.
Amy
Yeah.
Adams, all that,
Yep.
which was well received. So obviously, like rich history here, definitely ingrained in American culture. We're getting fully into the Muppets as a franchise, which is kind of inescapably tied hand in hand with Sesame Street as a
Yep.
franchise. So I wanted to get into that first, talking about like your history with Muppets, because I never really watched Sesame Street too much growing up, so I'm more familiar with like the Kermit side of things. Where did you land on that?
I know I watched Muppets
Right.
growing up, like the Muppet Show, because I know that my dad grew up with it and loved it, but I don't have any memory of it. But I know that for sure that I obviously would have watched it
It must have been around. Yeah.
at my grandmother's house, at my great grandmother's house. We would have watched it. It was just there. Um, my dad and his mom, my grandmother, um, they grew up in, Pennsylvania, up in that area. So when we would go and visit, we would go to my great grandmother's house, and I remember sitting on the floor, kind of just watching whatever. So it surely had to have come up there. But yeah, so my grandmother was kind of is she's still here? Uh, kind of like theatrical kind of person. She's big and loud, and she's hilarious, and
Hmm.
um, I have great memories of her of like trying to get me out of my shell to kind of like lean into acting or silly things like that.
Hell yeah.
So it was definitely in the DNA, but I don't have any specific memory to it. I also know that I definitely watched Sesame Street growing up, but similar story. I don't have defined, hardened memories around it, but I know it was there because like that's children's programming, primo, late 80s, early 90s. Like that's what you're going to be shoving in front of your kid.
Hmm.
Um, but the earliest memory that I do have from Muppets, and I think we touched on this last episode, was Muppet Babies,
Hmm.
which was a television show. I
This is a
think,
blind spot for me.
yeah. So, like, it's had a couple iterations. It was like in the mid 80s or whatever, but it went into syndication on Nickelodeon, I think, or Nick Jr., or whatever it was at the time, in like 1991 or 92, which was like primo for me. I remember watching that.
Is the
And
concept like pre Rugrats, just like babies having adventures, but they're kind of in the house the whole time?
100%. Yeah. Like
Okay.
there's like a mom character or like a lady, like a nanny character or whatever. And I'm sure you've seen it. Like it's just her legs. You never see any, it's a disembodied
The
set of
the
legs.
relationship between humans and animals in the Muppets world, you can't dig into very
You
far.
can't. Yeah. You're like Rolf the dog is humongous. Either that or he's very small dog. Or yeah, yeah. Or Kermit is a gigantic frog. You know? The proportions aren't there. But yeah, so that's my like touch point to like my early memories of Muppets, and obviously we've talked about it a bunch. That like my daughter is super into Muppets right now.
Hmm.
We watch Muppets or Sesame Street, you know, every single day for at
Hmm.
least an hour. Every single day, there's an hour time slot where we watch Sesame Street, and we went through the whole back catalog. We're almost caught up, so we're about to start all over again.
And
Uh,
Sesame Street is like ongoing, right? Like they are releasing new episodes.
Oh yeah, new episodes, new cast members, new Muppets introduced all the time. It's super cool.
This
But
is, I mean, this is what I always wonder. Like, what is the crossover between Muppets and Sesame Street? Like, do any of these characters ever make it onto that show?
absolutely it hasn't happened in a long time, but like in the 90s, Kermit would show up. And in
Hmm.
the 80s too, Kermit would show up every so often and he would show up as like a news reporter on
There's
Sesame
the gif
Street.
of him with like the K and stuff.
Yeah.
Like he's
It's
doing letters.
yeah, it's great. He shows up every so often, but he's like really the only one that kind of bleeds into it.
Hmm.
I don't know if the opposite is true. I don't know if any of the Sesame Street gang has ever ended up in on the Muppet stage, as it were.
Well, I wonder if like Tim Curry or Kermit the Frog was top billed on this movie on like the call sheet. You know,
Yes, I
yeah.
know.
Who got the bigger trailer?
Who definitely did. Who got their own kind of like concessions, kind of a thing. Who walked away with the bigger paycheck, right? That's what I'm curious for. But like another thing I definitely want to talk about is the sheer excitement in Ryan's voice when we were concepting out like we're going to do these themes, for this for 2023 and this kind of stuff. And we're going to land on maybe we'll do Muppets and she was like, "Shut up. We're going to do Muppets. That means we get to watch Muppet movies all month long." And I was like, "Yeah, baby, of course." And it's she is so excited. Like I legitimately have married a Muppet. Uh,
Has what is her experience with Muppets? Had she seen Treasure Island?
Oh yeah, she's seen all of these prior to, and she's the whole back catalog
Okay.
of all the stuff, and she is the one who has the hardened core memories of like, oh yeah, I remember watching Sesame Street all the time growing up and all this kind of stuff, and the Muppet Show and all this. She knows all the songs, and she dances like a Muppet, and it's the
Mhm.
cutest thing, and I love it so much.
It's like cool Pixar. I mean, like you guys give off like a cool Muppet energy. It's like kids, but with a little bit of edge to it. It's funny.
Yeah, it's definitely like kid presenting, but like if you listen, there's like some good adult jokes in there too.
Oh, there's a dick joke in this movie that I want to talk about, and I don't know if you missed it.
I probably did miss it.
Yeah. But yeah, so the Muppets, I never really watched the Muppet Show entirely, but like from what I understand, like that was like a prime time, like just variety show, like Saturday Night Live. Like it wasn't shown in the morning on like the Kids Hour or anything like that. Like they would have guests on and do sketches.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've heard my dad like recite to me like, "Oh, I remember like the first episode of
Hmm.
when it came on and it was mind-blowing because nothing had ever done that before."
Yeah,
And
I was looking online on it, and like the way they describe it, in addition to sketches, is like burlesque style comedy, which makes so much sense. Like how there's such a mixture of just like singing and dancing, but also just like the way that they move is so expressive, and their bodies as puppets are so much a part of it.
I know it's so great. It's genius. And that's the thing that I keep coming back to.
Mhm.
And I touched on the last episode is just like, sure, yeah, it's for kids or whatever. And it's rudimentary puppetry, whatever you want to call it. It's felt and whatever. But it's still really impressive the way that they're able to emote
Yeah,
and, get all these kinds of complex emotions and stuff across from just like this simple lifeless thing. And it's really, really impressive.
it is impressive. I mean, if you think about it, like aside from like the cartoon Muppet Babies and maybe some of like the Disney Channel cartoons these days, like Muppets have retained puppetry and physical media in a way that like other franchises maybe haven't. Like these days, if a kid's franchise is getting remade, it may be more animated, it may be like 3D, it looks like Frozen or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas the Muppets have been able to show success with puppetry, which seems old fashioned in a way that like keeps that going into the 2020s. Like it
Yeah.
puppetry is alive and well because of the Muppets, even though you can literally see the strings in this movie, which I love.
I know, it's great, right? See, Joe, like this is what we missed out on by not going to the Center for Puppetry Arts in
You're gonna
Midtown
hold
Atlanta.
this over my goddamn head again.
I know, because there's like the history of or puppeting is, it's as old as civilization, really. It's making shadow puppets on cave walls
It's
using
it's Play-Doh.
fire. Like, yeah, right. It's Play-Doh. And that's why I think it has it's lasted the test of time because it's something that kids and anybody can emulate themselves in their room
Mhm.
after they watch. You can't emulate a cartoon or a transformer or hop into a Barbie's Corvette in your room. Like you can pretend in a cardboard box, but like you can make your own sock puppet,
Mhm.
right? And have a conversation with it. I mean, like I think that's the magic of it.
And I think the way that these Muppet movies and like Jim Henson movies in general have always taken advantage of that is that these movies are never 100% puppetry. It's always humans mixed in with puppets. And so having that physical presence of a puppet and not like a CGI puppet that you're kind of playing off against you're acting against a tennis ball,
Yeah.
makes it so much more real. Like Tim Curry is able to give this kind of zany performance where he's 100% locked in because he actually is surrounded by these things and he's able to look them in the eye, right? And
He
that's something that they
definitely
keep going forward.
he definitely puts his whole Tim Cussy in it. I love his performance in this. To bring it back around, like that's always something that I've that stands out to me. Like now, modern times, watching even older Muppet pieces, television movies or
Yeah.
whatever. The true really great actors and the good memorable pieces are the actors who give their whole selves into, like, all right, that is an actual real talking frog that I'm talking to. I'm not paying attention to the person underneath and I can see the top of his head or I can see his mouth moving. I'm playing off this actual puppet like it's a real
Mhm.
fucking thing.
It's become kind of a status symbol with actors. It's like before SNL was even a thing, like you want to be on the Muppet Show. If you're a real actor worth your spit or whatever, like you're acting across from a puppet.
Yeah. Take
That
on the
kind of
challenge.
any like iconic shot from Muppets or Sesame Street includes like just a famous actor sitting down with Elmo or something like that.
Yeah. Like you can definitely tell that there's actually way more duds than standouts of people who can't give it across convincingly.
Hmm.
Um, like current day Sesame Street, there's always a celebrity guest or something on there.
Yeah.
And there's some people who kind of phone it in, um, B-level celebrities or athletes or whatever who
Get
aren't,
him out of here.
they're not like super great, but like they still try. But the people who really stand out, like Jack Black or
You want to see like Helen Mirren on there with the Muppets, you know?
I want to see what she can do. Yeah.
You want
Put
to see Ian McKellen.
Could you imagine
I don't know why I'm picking older British actors for all these
Sir
examples.
Ian McKellen? Because American actors ain't worth shit. That's why. Oh, Joe, this was fun. This was a good just rounding out piece. Ryan always teases me of just like, you've never seen Muppet Treasure Island? Like, who the hell are you?
This is the one that kind of sticks out. I mean, there's 6, 7, 8 Muppet major like theatrical releases, depending on like how you're counting them. But this movie in particular, the reason I picked it, Muppet Treasure Island, exists in a window along with Muppets in Space, where it's in the late 90s, early 2000s, and this is what I consider like a library VHS. We were huge like library children growing up, and so that's where you go to the library once a week and you can rent up to 5 movies. And so it was a matter of like everyone go pick out a movie, and this was just on the shelf all the time. It was that. It was like Magic School Bus. It was the double VHS of Titanic. That's so iconic.
What? It's Magic School Bus, Muppet Treasure Island, Titanic.
Like
Where there's
you'd
actual
only
boobs.
understand if you were a library kid. I'm sorry. But
So was this
this
always your pick? All 9 of you would go scampering throughout the library, and little Joe would come back with this movie every
this
single time.
this was the Muppet movie that was available, and the thing was we didn't have like cable, so we didn't have like channels. We had a TV, but it was just like VHSs and DVDs, right? And so we have this like massive collection of DVDs and movies at our house right now that are not being used at all, of course. But we would also go to the library to kind of refresh things, and this was one of the ones that was always there, so we would get it all the time. So this is the Muppet movie that I am most familiar with, and it also ties into, I mean, this is our Muppet miniseries. We're going to talk about Muppets, but I want to get into piracy as a concept and dig in because I love pirate movies. I sent you a whole text thread about this. We were texting about this. Like, pirate movies are just like the ultimate adventure films. I have a deep, deep love for the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbeans.
Oh, yeah.
Those hold a very special place in my heart. You think about those, you think about Treasure Planet, Treasure Island, Peter Pan. It's always this story of like piracy as a way to escape the doldrums of modern
Ooh.
life and kind of go against the expectations of society, right?
Yeah,
It's
pirates were like the bikers,
I
you
want to
know.
get on a ship and just like go explore the edges of the map, you know? Like
Yeah.
even watching this movie, like I want to go to the damn island.
You just want to hang out, eat bananas, and maybe get some cool raw pork kind of a thing. Like,
Like it is it's heavily romanticized, like being a pirate or having to deal with actual pirates back then in like the 1700s was probably horrible, like horrific.
oh sure, yeah, like very smelly, obviously smelly,
Just
riddled with disease.
everything's gangrening,
Yeah,
everything's rotting. Um,
yeah.
but they were probably having a great time.
They were loving it, just sailing on the high seas, getting sunburned and not even really caring.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just shoe bag leather, just ripping over the ocean, just having
But
just guys being dudes.
the swashbuckler genre is one of my tops. It's very important to me.
Yeah. So,
Um,
hey, before we go any further, let's do two things.
Lay it on me.
Let's do the trailer.
Okay.
We'll do a cheers after that. And then the third thing to top it off, and then we'll just dive into all the conversation. I'll give you the plot.
Wait, hang on. Let me give you some film stats real quick, and then we'll jump into the trailer.
Okay.
Okay. Muppet Treasure Island, released in 1996, February, directed by Brian Henson. We were talking about Son of Jim, based on the classic Robert Louis Stevenson book, stars Tim Curry, Billy Connolly giving a insane performance. Jennifer Saunders, who I only noticed this go round was Jennifer Saunders. Kevin Bishop playing Jim. We'll get into it.
Hmm.
And a variety of voice actors and puppeteers, including Frank Oz, our good
Absolutely. There's the
friend.
connection. Yeah,
Happy birthday, Frank.
that's right.
Scored by Hans fucking Zimmer.
I saw
Um,
that and I was like, holy shit.
yeah, yeah, I didn't realize that. Helped by Harry Gregson Williams, who did like the Chronicles of Narnia and The Martian.
Oh,
Really good music in this film.
yeah.
Made 34 million. That's only the domestic number, though. I don't know how much it made internationally against a budget of 31 million. So it was a nice little
It made
nest
a
egg
little bit.
there.
Yeah.
And it was positively reviewed and released in theaters. This movie released in theaters. You gotta love the 90s. Bring it back.
Right. Just put everything in theaters again,
Yeah.
folks. It's fine.
Lay the trailer on us. Let's
Let's.
see
I'm gonna.
this.
I'm gonna slap this on you. Here we go. And we don't have audio. Well, if you can just imagine there being a trailer in that spot.
Okay, we're gonna show the trailer, and Justin's going to narrate what is happening in the
Oh,
trailer.
here we go. I love that idea. Let's do that. Okay.
Let's try this one more time.
All right, so it's a sunset. Oh, and they show the treasure at the beginning. Anyway, so there's some pirates on a boat. Oh, and there's some treasure chests, and there appears to be an admiral. Oh wait, nope. It's just kidding. It's Captain Smollett. It's none other than Kermit the Frog, unfurling the sails, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna go on an adventure." And there's Jim, and he's like, "Yeah, I can't wait." And Gonzo's turning the thing, and Rizzo's just there for fun. And oh, there's Billy Bones, and he's talking about something, and Tim Curry's laughing, and he doesn't have a leg. He only has one leg, and he's like, "It's not a big deal. I'm going to own a restaurant one day. That's fine." And there is Gonzo just having a good time. Oh no, someone has a sword to Kermit's throat. There's Fozzie being a typical Fozzie. I don't remember this scene. That scene was cut. Oh, and some crazy pigs are stomping around, and they're all tied up. And who's it going to be? What's the big reveal? They're having some riffing back and forth, and wouldn't you know, it's Miss Piggy in all her glory. And Kermit takes a big gulp, and oh man, she's gonna smack the shit out of him. And yeah, it's great. He hits a gong, and he says it's an old girlfriend. It's hilarious. And then they break into song and adventure and whimsy. There's Sam the Eagle. There's a fun dance number. And let's see. There's Beaker and Bunsen. Again, more adventures of a boat on the out in the ocean. Puppets flying everywhere. Tim Curry can't believe it. There's a crustacean and there's a pig and a frog hanging out, and they're fighting. They're beating up people, and she kisses him. How fun. And that's the one that doesn't end. Muppet Treasure Island, coming to a theater near you. 1996, folks.
We're gonna run some polls, but this may be how we have to do trailers going forward. We'll see how that plays with the audiences.
With the folks. Yeah, let us
That was
know.
incredible, Justin. Well done.
Can that can
Um,
that be considered my plot as well?
no, no.
Okay.
That was a description of scenes. You're gonna give me an actual plot, which we can knock out. Are you improv'd out, or are you ready to give a plot description?
Dude, I'm never improv'd out. Yes, and.
Hell yes.
Yes, and me, daddy.
Okay, I'm going to give you 1 minute, as is tradition, and you will give me a plot description for Muppet Treasure Island. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's just get into it.
Muppet Treasure Island centers around the tale of Jim Hawkins, a young lad. He's hanging out with Billy Bones. They're good friends, and Billy tells them of a legend of this treasure on this island. But be wary because we were double crossed by a pirate. But here's the map. But I'm gonna die, and it's really traumatic. Um, anyway, the pirates come in. They jump on board because they're like, what else we have to lose? They run into Fozzie, and he's the financier, and he's a big dummy. And then Kermit comes in and takes over the ship, and they go to the island, and there's Tim Curry. He's in the bottom. He's the lowly cook, but it turns out he's the bad pirate. He only has one leg. So then they get to the island, and he double crosses everybody. They try to find the treasure, but it's not there. But turns out the treasure and Piggy was there the whole time, and they maroon him. There is a mutiny, and everybody wins at the end. Honestly,
I know you were so close to saying the real treasure is the friendships we make along the way.
the heartbreak that comes in too of the friendships that you bear, but that one friend turns out to be just a shisty pirate.
It's a deceptively hard plot to summarize. There's a lot of back and forth that happens in like the last 30 minutes of this movie that is almost 2 hours long.
It was a long movie. We had to watch
a
it over
long
the course
movie.
of 2 nights. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you got the bones there. Pretty much like we were talking, like pretty much every version of this story follows that structure, right? So Jim gets a map. Pirates are after it. The pirates are part of the old crew of Flint, who hid the treasure and then killed all the people who helped him dig it. And then there's some good people on the ship that he teams up with, but the pirates also figure out a way to insert themselves as the crew, and then they eventually take over the ship when they get to the island. And there's kind of a back and forth almost of like, will Jim join up with them because he's kind of taken a shine to the pirate life, versus will he kind of grow up and stay true to himself? And what role does treasure really play in all of this? Because the treasure as a concept it's a weird kind of MacGuffin. We see the treasure in like one scene, but it's always almost something that they're just constantly chasing, right?
Yeah, I forgot about it until the very end. I was like, oh yeah,
Right,
there's
you never
treasure.
really think about like what are they actually going to do once they have the treasure? Like how do they sell this? Like in so many of these pirate movies, like the treasure is the goal, but you can't like eat gold. So like what are we doing with it? Is there a market that we're going to get rid of all this? Where does the treasure come from? All that stuff. And it's simple and you don't have to worry about it, and that's why I love these movies.
Yeah, they just take you along for the adventure, and you're there for. And as a person who had never seen it before and was also not very familiar with the story, I went along with the adventure, and I experienced the double cross and the kind of like Vader, Luke Skywalker kind of betrayal at the end, and there's like join me kind of a thing, like we can be friends, we can be pirates, Jim, come on.
It's these themes of the call to adventure versus the dragging down of responsibility, and which way are you going to go to as you come of age. It's very present in a lot of these classic works. I love how you are first and foremost experiencing this iconic piece of literature as a Muppet movie.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, honestly, the cherry popping actually happened with Black Sails. To be frank about it,
Is there a treasure in Black Sails? Like, is that the basic concept there?
so we didn't get that far into it, but it is the general basis around the whole lore.
Mm-hmm.
There is like you find he's kind of like a um not Jack Sparrow, Game of Thrones. He's
Blackbeard,
Jon Snow. He's kind of Jon Snowy.
Jon Snowy. Okay.
He the early years of John Silver
Mm-hmm.
before he's long John Silver. He still has two legs, kind of a thing. It's his backstory, and it's the whole like conquistador stuff and the historical pieces and the British and all that. And we didn't get too deep into it, but yeah, there's Blackbeard and all the other big name pirates. There's a bunch of, and I learned this from Ryan too. So it is Treasure Island, but then there's also like sprinkled in like real life pirates.
Mm-hmm.
I think Calico Jack is one of them, who was a real pirate, plays a role in the story, and there's a couple other people that like play a role in it, and it's really cool. But we didn't get
Yeah.
too far in it, but that was kind of my first introduction. I was like, oh, okay, Treasure Island, I've heard of it, but I don't really know the story.
I mean, there's a lot of pirate lore to build from that actually like historically happened. I think Pirates of the Caribbean does that to an extent too.
Yeah.
Like they eventually introduced Blackbeard as like an antagonist in one of those movies.
Is
Um,
that the one where it turns out it's the guy from the Rolling Stones?
no, that's his dad in Pirates of the Caribbean, so that's like a sparrow. But Blackbeard comes in with the Penelope Cruz movie, where like he's her dad. It's
They
not a
lost
great
me.
one.
They lost me, and I have seen the first two or three,
Yeah.
but they're all one big movie to me.
The first three, like, definitely have their faults. I get people's complaints with them because they're like so up and down and heightened and stuff. But like, they at the very least are a solid trilogy. Like, there is a start and a middle and an end. And then they just kind of tacked on one-off movies, which I don't think are as good.
They kind of did the Fast and the Furious treatment, which I haven't dug into either. So
What are you talking about? Fast and Furious is a very precariously knitted together tetralogy of movies. What do we call it? What do we call a 12 series movie?
a dodecaology.
Dodecology.
Yeah,
It's been planned since the beginning, so read up
yeah,
on it.
I will.
I have a ton of notes that I want to get into. Let's do the cocktail real quick before we're both done drinking these. What do you got going over there?
Okay, so yeah, I have a green beverage here that you will see
Mhm.
that it is kind of reminiscent of a certain talking frog.
Oh, it's
Okay.
very pretty.
Yeah, but the ever the showman, there is a side piece to it, and it's a little pink thing. So what this is called the Smollett and Boom Shakalaka. Remnant, it's Kermit and Piggy.
Mhm.
So this and the main guy here is vodka, melon liqueur, sweet and sour, and blue curacao to give it that
Mm,
real bright green. And then in here is just some white rum and cranberry juice. And I'm gonna
Justin, we
mix them
were
together because that they were just doing it.
we were very much on the same page with this. That's awesome. What color does it make when you mix red and green like that?
You tell me, it's kind of brown now.
Does it taste good?
Ooh, yeah.
I bet that cranberry is really shining through, doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. What do you got?
Okay. I have what I'm calling a piece of eight, kind of leaning into the pirate side of things. And it naturally has eight ingredients. So it is 1 part white rum, samesies, 1 part ginger ale, and then a dash of maraschino liqueur, dash of blue curacao, dash of triple sec, dash of lime juice, dash of lemon juice, and then I'm including ice as the ingredient because I didn't want to put any more else into this.
Oh my god. So this is kind of your version of a blue motherfucker in a way.
It's like a what do you call it when you do all of the sodas? It's like a suicide drink or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I basically we're not fully stocked. I took everything that was on the top of the fridge and
Just kinda
kind of yes anded myself into a very boozy liqueur drink.
It's what a pirate would do.
Right.
You
Right.
start with the rum and then you add what else is available to
You
you.
take what you have. Everything is a stew.
Yeah.
And piracy's probably more accepting as a culture than any other culture at the
A
time, right?
100%. You know what? I have seen and I have read some things that like they were probably like the most or one of the more, accepting
Yeah.
communities at their time.
It's a what is it called when like you exist in a society where it's like it's how well you can do, not who you are or whatever. It's basically
The
they judge
socialist
you.
version.
Yeah, they're socialist in a way. There's a word for it. It's basically just like what are your skills, and how can you contribute to this ship? Not like who were you, what family were you born into, or anything.
Right,
Piracy was
yeah.
very much existing out of the social norms,
Hmm.
and I love it. Even though, again, fully aware it would have been awful, and I would have died immediately if transported back in those times.
You think so? I mean, you're crafty, you're funny. You would have
I
made
think I'd
it
be taller than everyone else, but I'd get like scurvy.
because you don't like oranges.
I just there's no like access to oranges there. You know, like where are you getting the oranges? I need an orange juice.
Does anyone have any orange juice on this
Tropicana
boat?
wasn't around.
Yeah, like I can't do this. Are you kidding me? And you just jump off the ship and it's tragic.
Everything's so salty and sticky.
Yeah,
Oof.
it's smelly.
Cocktail hour. Okay. Let's talk through kind of the finer points of this plot. I want to talk about so when you talk about like the framing of a Muppet movie, we've talked about how it's a very clear mixture of these classic Muppet characters playing different versions of themselves, and then like newer human characters who are also playing in this same world as them. And it's not really commented on that like some of us are puppets, some of us are human. Like it's kind of just like this is an accepted reality.
Hmm.
So there's four main human performances in
Yeah,
this movie. There is the two adults at the beginning, played by Billy Connolly as Billy Bones, and then Jennifer Saunders as Mrs. Bluffery, Mrs. Lovett, something. I,
yeah,
I
something like
can't
that.
remember how they pronounce it. She's the inn lady,
Hmm.
who's funny, and there's like a recurring bit where she always hears what they're saying even when they're outside.
Yeah,
Um,
how does she do that? Yeah,
Billy Connolly doing a lot of really drunk, sweaty acting in this film. Kind of scary as a child. That's
sure.
a man who's like yelling at you a lot.
Hmm.
Um, Dies early on. Has basically a heart attack after getting
He gets the
kicked out
black
of
spot. Yeah,
piracy.
yeah. I was gobsmacked by that. I was like, oh, they're just killing this guy off immediately
Yeah.
in this children's movie.
So Billy Bones iconically always dies at the beginning of the story. I told you over text how Blind Pew, the guy who comes and gives him the black spot, always scared me as a kid. Just the way he moves and
Yeah.
talks, which I find kind of hilarious these days, even though Jonathan, my partner, pointed out that he's doing a horrible
Pep-
French impression.
yeah, kind of like a
Never
Pepe Le
realized he
Pew.
was French the entire time,
Yeah.
um, but also very funny. Um, it's reminiscent to. Did you watch Aladdin growing up?
Yeah.
So when Jafar dresses up as the old man in the prison,
Yeah.
terrifying. Used to terrify me as a child. I kind of put these two together in my mind as like this is a slightly old person who's very much moving in a way that I find scary.
Yeah, like it definitely, yeah, this was a thing in the 90s of kind of just like ickyifying and vilifying old people.
Hmm.
Like, ew, gross. And yeah, he moves in a weird way. And even just the puppet like makeup and stuff of it, it's really weird. It
Well,
is
that's
off-putting for sure.
it's kind of the thing that we noted in our Labyrinth episode is that the these Muppets haven't been fully Disneyfied just yet, and so some of these Muppets are just like they're fucking ugly looking and they're dirty and like they got like rotten teeth and stuff, and like it's not pristine, it's not Pixar at this point. That was kind of the Muppet signature where a lot of these pirates look like shit,
Yeah, it's
a little
scary.
bit.
Who's the one who's got like there's a pirate on the ship that has like a big nose and he's kind of has like boils on his face and
Oh, the random green guy.
yeah. They're leaning hard into the ickiness of it.
We got we got to run down the scene where they randomly have the roll call on the ship, and he announces like 20 different pirate names. That's one of my favorite spots
It's good.
where they go from like, what is his name? Like old Henry, older Henry, dead Henry, or whatever. And it's just older and
Dead
older
Tom.
versions. Dead Tom.
They killed Dead Tom.
Clueless Morgan, the goat.
Yeah. So good.
um,
That's good.
yeah. So we have this inn as the first set piece, where we're also introduced to our Jim Hawkins, who is always the protagonist of Treasure Island. One thing I remember about this movie is the kid actor at the center of it not necessarily being great. And I want to talk about this performance in relation to Jennifer Connelly's performance in Labyrinth, because watching it again, I appreciate it maybe a little bit more. He's
Yeah.
doing some good work here. They maybe just give him like the most unfortunate singing moments.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Oh, it's bad.
they had him singing maybe 2 octaves higher for some reason than he should be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but hey, it's the 90s.
He was trying.
But like you compare a performance like this to a performance 10 years previous in Labyrinth, where they're both kind of these never really seen before child actors thrust into this world of Muppets and daunting older humans. And you can kind of see the evolution there, where something like Labyrinth is a little darker, whereas with Muppets Treasure Island, with like the Kermit group of Muppets, there's a lot more joking happening, and you're never really like worried for the safety of this child.
No, definitely not. Comparatively to Labyrinth, you're like, oh, she might actually get chopped up
Yeah,
to bits.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then rounding off the cast, you've got Jim Hawkins. You have Tim Curry as Long John Silver. So I'd say he's kind of the name that goes with this movie. Like
Oh, yeah.
if any name is going on top of the poster here, they could do like a Space Jam where they have like Tim Curry and then Kermit the Frog build at the top, the
Yeah.
same way they have Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think everyone has kind of a Tim Curry entry point in culture. What would you
Mm-hmm.
say is yours? What's your history with Curry?
So first of all, I love that this is the social litmus test to know who to be friends with and who to keep at arm's length. You know, so I do love that this has become a thing. I wholeheartedly, when I pictured my earliest memory of Tim Curry, I have two.
Uh-huh.
Um, the main one that I saw over and over and over a bunch of times was from Home Alone 2, where he's the hotel manager or concierge, whatever it is in that role. I watched the movie a ton, and he's hilarious in that
He's
role
so good in that.
as kind of like a barrier, sort of like not quite the main antagonist, but a barrier for Kevin throughout that whole
Him
movie.
trying not to cry after Catherine O'Hara slaps him in the face is so good.
It's comedy gold. Yeah, oh man, the facial expressions that man can command is great.
Hmm.
A second to like, but barely, and I'm pretty sure I saw this way before Home Alone 2, but I didn't know that this was Tim Curry at the time. But have you ever seen the movie Legend with Tom Cruise from 1986? I think
No. Wow, no.
we're gonna add that to the list because that movie fucking rules. But he is plays a character called Darkness. But
Oh
he
wow.
but he's dressed as like the devil, right? You've seen the pictures, I'm sure, of like he has like these giant horns and he's red, but he's ripped and he has like cloven hooves. Like it's amazing. The prosthetics and stuff.
I gotta look this up.
He looks incredible. But that is my one of my that is probably my check mark earliest memory of like that's the first thing I saw Tim Curry in.
Hmm.
Um, but I didn't even know that that was him. But like that's a very fuzzy memory. The other one that I have, so it's actually three, is Fern Gully.
Oh my god, I was gonna say Fern Gully. Yeah,
Yeah, Fern Gully as what is he? The
Hexus.
Hexus, yes. And again, like I didn't know that that's who it was, but it was just like this really like borderline sexy, charming
Yeah, who
bad
would have
guy
thought you can
voice.
be attracted to a pile of mud and slime?
Yeah, and you're like, what is happening to me? Yeah.
Do I
Um,
like this?
I think I do. What's happening? Um, but yeah, so those are my Tim Curry touch points. It's really not a fair answer, but those are what I got.
No, I think that puts you in a great spot on like the Curry
Spectrum.
spectrum.
Yeah.
It gives you a great score. I have a really random Curry introduction that was kind of like my one Tim Curry role that I knew about for a long time. So like
Okay.
getting into adulthood, I knew about like Rocky Horror Picture Show. I knew about um, what else is he in? Clue. Clue.
Clue.
I didn't
Yeah.
watch that for a while. The one movie I did watch all the time because we owned it was the '90s Three Musketeers. Have you ever seen that?
Is that the one with
With
Leo?
Charlie Sheen and Chris O'Donnell and Sutherland, Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, I didn't see that. I did not see that one. The one I'm thinking of is Man with the Iron Mask.
Oh
Different.
no 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 no. That's
Related, but
that's
different.
kind of like the quasi follow up. No, so
No, I
it's like
didn't see that.
early '90s Three Musketeers. Tim Curry plays Cardinal Richelieu, who's the villain in that movie, and it's like on the level of like whatever Alan Rickman is doing in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Ooh, uh-huh.
Something similar is happening where it's like this guy's a fucking vibe, and all the comedic moments in this otherwise kind of dramatic action movie are
Yeah.
his.
Yeah.
um he's so funny, he's kind of terrifying in certain moments, but he's got these one liners, he's got this weird kind of Jeff Goldblum-esque sexual energy to him, but also like you can't really pin down if he's like attracted to everyone or no one. And
Yeah.
so having that level of like mystery is such a great thing to bring to a movie like this where he has to play a pirate that has like an intense level of theatricality to him,
Hmm.
but also can in a heightened state form this like actual emotional connection with this kid, right?
Yeah.
You can tell some of my favorite parts about this movie, other than like the Muppet bits where it's just like just the two of them, you can tell the parts where he's almost close to kind of breaking and like relating to this kid on his level
Yeah.
when they're talking about like the stars and stuff, and he teaches them how to use the North Star.
Hmm.
And that's something that shows up in pretty much every iteration of this story is Silver kind of growing fond of Jim against his best wishes, right? He
Yeah.
can't help it.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, it's definitely attributed to Tim Curry being able to command the screen
mhm.
and the scene. Because like we said, Jim Hawkins, the kid actor, isn't as strong as we would like him to be, especially in the
Mhm.
musical moments. But um, in the scenes when they are together, like you said, he obviously brings out some of that the just natural childlike innocence and things like that that kind of disarms and brings and knocks down John Silver a level.
Mhm.
um and I think it's really great, and like you said, like those are really good scenes together.
And then like when he's at the height of like just campy Long John Silver, it says something when you're in a movie surrounded by Muppets and you're one of the most just expressive characters in the movie.
Yeah, I
Everything on his face is just wide open.
the note that I had is just like the his only number is so good. It is exactly that. It is when they get to the island and he lands on the island and all the riffraff join him, and he like finally like lets down his hair, and he's just like, yeah, I'm Long John Silver. I'm this
He's
badass
he's the
pirate.
captain.
I'm so cool. And that's when he starts to strut a little bit, and
Mhm.
And that's when the charm level turns up a lot. And it's, he's like, yeah, I was a bad guy all along, Jim. Like, you sucker. You suck, man.
I'll touch on the dick joke here. Then we
Oh,
might as
hit
well.
me. I missed it.
So Miss Piggy comes into play. It's so funny that she is the stowaway or the castaway on the
Yeah.
island, played, who's usually a character named Ben. It's this like old crazy guy who they find on the island in every iteration of the story.
Hmm.
So funny that it's Miss Piggy in this one. They find her. Long John Silver comes across her and Kermit, and they clearly have a history together. And she calls him Long John Silver. I don't know if you picked up on that, but there's definitely a moment that happens between them.
I believe it, and I can't believe I let that one wash over me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Miss Piggy, she
well,
can get it.
let's get into the Muppet side of things. Obviously, the highlight of this movie is the fact that it is a Muppet movie, and so that comes with kind of all the zaniness. We talked about how this era of Muppet movies is more like self-referential and like parodying rather than being like an original movie.
I did love that about it. So you touched on it, like how the original trilogy and earlier movies were original stories and that kind of stuff, and moving them along as characters. Whereas in this era, the '90s that we're in with these movies, they're doing, you know, building off of IP and that kind of stuff.
It becomes more Mel Brooksy.
Right. And they call it out specifically when they showed the Swedish chef. They're like, "How else did you think we were going to get him in this movie?" And it's this fun guessing game of like, how is, this character going to show up in this
They
story and how are they going to play that kind of character? It's great.
they reference the fact that they're in a movie comedically several times. There's several like classic Muppet cameos where I gasped because I forgot that they were Muppets. The Swedish chef, I think I screamed out loud. The band, Dr. Teeth, and
Yeah.
the guys, that was
Electric
fun.
Mayhem.
I also love, I always laugh that there's kind of a side plot of like a modern day rat cruise happening.
That was my
Um,
favorite part, honestly.
just like on the sidelines of everything. Like there's this pirate story happening, but then there's these rats that are just on a cruise on the ship. And so they'll like jet ski by or they'll be like having dinner theater off to the side.
It's great. Yeah, the one of my favorite ones is that they were walking onto one of the sets and there's like, over here, folks, over here on the
There's a
set of
tour guide going through.
Muppet Treasure Island. So line up here this way. Hilarious. That was one of my favorite things. Rizzo the Rat has always been one of my favorite characters.
Hmm.
He plays the same kind of character in any movie that he's in. He's always kind of deadpan and kind of breaking the fourth wall a little bit
Yeah.
with the audience. I think he got the line of like, "Wow, that's pretty dark for a kids movie." Like
When the guy dies.
yeah.
When I like how they typically pair him and Gonzo up, at least in these 90s movies. So you got like in Muppet Christmas Carol, I think they're the narrators.
Yep.
I need to go back and watch.
Yeah, Gonzo
In
is Dickens.
Right. And then in this movie, little behind the scenes action, they were originally going to be named Jim and Hawkins, so they were going to be the Jim Hawkins character kind of combined.
Oh.
But then the producers were like, we need an actual human face to kind of be the emotional center of this
Yeah.
movie, and so they got the kid actor. And then
That was a smart move.
in the Muppets in Space, I believe that takes place in modern day, and they all just like live in a house together, and they're like roommates. So
they have a
they're good
roommate.
foils with each other. They're best friends. It's good to kind of have them as the comedic center of this movie. The same way you have like Kermit and Piggy as a little bit more serious, not serious. Kermit's a little bit more stoic, but then they obviously have like the romantic center of this movie,
Yep.
which always takes you off guard. This frog and this pig, completely different sizes. You never see them together, and yet they have this undeniable attraction to each other, and these like love ballads that they always burst out in every movie. It's insane.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I genuinely I keep coming back to like the genuine excitement that I had going through the story because I was just like, oh yeah, shit, I forgot about
Hmm.
when is Miss Piggy going to show up?
Hmm.
and like, oh, there's the Swedish chef. That's really cool. And yeah, I was along for the journey and had a real good time
I forgot about Fozzie Bear as a character until he showed up. He's
in
so funny. The fact that they just make his character have a man who lives in his finger that he's listening to.
it.
I mean, in like the Treasure Planet version of this story I told you, like David Hyde Pierce plays his version of the character. There's always kind of like a wealthy benefactor who sponsors the ship, but is
Mhm.
always a little bit clueless. Um, God, I would say he's got the best voice acting in the movie. I love the way that they do his voice. Um, but then, what was my other note? Um, oh, I think I realized Bunsen and Beaker are my favorite Muppets just in general.
Oh yeah.
I love their dynamic. I almost wish they had a little bit more screen time, even though they're technically like part of the crew the whole time. Usually they get a little bit more back and forth, but they're kind of tied up for most of this movie.
It's true. Yeah. Bunsen and Beaker. I just love just the physical comedy and just the sheer shrill shrieking
Hmm.
of just me 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 me. It's so funny to me. But yeah, like Gonzo and Rizzo has just like always just risen to the top of me, and even just recently, and just watching all these movies over and over again. Um, and some obviously for the first time. It's just like that's really clever. It's always Muppets, capital M Muppets is always like green with the collar, and it's always like the Kermit show and whatever. Kermit's always been kind of just lukewarm to me. He's pretty funny. He's a good leader, that kind of thing. But like, I love the deadpan comic kind of relief of Gonzo and Rizzo,
Hmm.
and then just like the sheer like dad joke kind of stuff of Fozzie Bear just
Hmm.
kills me. It's
And
so
then
good.
the pirate crew, just as a backdrop, it's just jokes on jokes on jokes.
So many jokes.
It's such a great mixture of human characters and Muppet characters. We talked about Clueless Morgan being the goat who really just has no idea what's going on. Um, but so many of the one-liners that we would just repeat to ourselves in childhood are like coming from him, where he's like, "What's that song that just played? Like Cabin Fever." Um,
Oh god, Cabin Fever was the standout number
Let's
for
get
sure.
into the music here.
Yeah,
So this is coming from an era where movies like this are always going to tend to be musicals.
sure.
I don't know if Christmas Carol is a musical like this, but the history of the Muppets is kind of intertwined with music, I would say, and
Yep.
so you get a movie like this where every major character kind of has a number. It's almost like a Disney structure in a way where you start with like the I want music. You have
Yeah.
the prequel music where it's like the pirates digging the treasure. I love that song. And then you get out onto the boat and there is a number about them just like sailing for adventure on the big blue sea or whatever.
Yeah, just being pirates. Yeah, the big
And
blue thing. Yeah.
then you get into Cabin Fever, which I think is the one thing I remember most about this movie because how can you forget? What
It's
first
so
thoughts?
fun. So fun. It was a complete left turn. I was like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. They're out on the ship for a while. They're kind of starting to be loopy and losing their mind. What's going to happen next?
Going a little sun crazy.
And it's a full on hula number and hilarious.
It's so
So
funny.
fun. So fucking funny.
It becomes Looney Tunes for a second. They're all kind of hitting themselves over the head with these massive hammers a little bit, and the entire ship becomes a disco ball. It seems like,
Yeah.
and then the wind picks up, and it all drops, and they're like, "What the hell was that?"
It's so funny. Like I really enjoyed that piece. I was like, this is the standout for me. How could this get any better? And then they land on the island and then Long John gets his number and
Hmm.
he's just chewing the scenery. And it's really great.
It's so good. It's just like the idea as of piracy as a way to like hang on to your youth, and you don't have to follow the rules. You don't have to grow up. You don't have to like be a part of society. Come steal from folks and have fun forever.
Yeah, it's
It's very
the
Peter Pan.
it's very Peter Pan, it's very Robin Hood of just like, yeah, fuck the establishment, fuck the man. let's just go on an adventure, man. Like the ocean is huge. Let's go see what we can find. Let's go, yeah, just have a good. Let's go have a good time. You
It's
know?
a romp. I love this movie. I love how we talked about like even with the evolution of puppetry from a movie like Labyrinth in the mid 80s to a movie like this in the mid 90s, like they still retain certain physical elements. Like you can see the sticks holding up their arms and stuff. Like they don't really try to hide that because that's kind of part of the experience of watching a Muppet movie is
Definitely.
having this evidence of the puppeteer in place, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you some behind the scenes info here.
Gimme.
So, coming off the success of A Muppet Christmas Carol, they wanted to adapt another classic story instead of creating an original Muppet story like the first three. So that kind of is where that came from. Like they hit it with Muppet Christmas Carol, and they're like, "Let's see
We're
if
onto something here.
we can do some classic literature again."
It's really interesting that they kind of stuck in the same era in a
Hmm.
sense. Like I'm not really sure when in history these um, pirate stories take place in the
Hmm.
1700s, probably.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Christmas Carol is probably like 1800s. This one's probably 1700s. Yeah,
Yeah. So like old stories,
right,
right?
right, right,
And
right.
I think it's interesting that they chose those for kids stories to make like a kids movie because they are inherently very dark.
Yeah, I mean, you read these stories and there's very heightened themes of like good versus bad, as opposed to like you're not going to get like a murky gray area. They're not going to do like Muppet World War II or something like that, you know? Like, it's a lot easier to do Christmas Carol or Treasure Island or like King Arthur was one of the things I know they were considering for a
Ooh,
second before
yeah,
this
Sword
too.
in the Stone, that kind of thing. Yeah, and I guess being before this is before they were acquired by Disney, that whole kind of thing. The uh shit, what is it called? It's not the intellectual property, but it's the what is it?
Copyright,
The copyright stuff of like where like Winnie the Pooh just came into public domain, right?
public domain.
Like where you can go into like just remake a story just because. And I guess, Disney had such a stranglehold on a bunch of
Yeah.
those kinds of stories. They're just like, I don't know what's left. Dickens and
It's like they can't really do fairy tales, and so they have to do like classic literature like this.
yeah, I mean, I guess like yeah, like the Brothers Grimm, all those kinds of story, those fairy tales and stuff had already been spoken for, or
Hmm.
else they probably would have done that, which would have been really cool. I would have loved like a fucking follow up to this, doing like an anthology movie
Hmm.
around all of those like grim fairy tales, but Muppets. That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. Looking at like so Muppets is pretty much completely owned by Disney at this point, and they release stuff on Disney Plus sometimes. And
Hmm.
looking at what they've come out with, there's like an animated show around Muppet Babies, I believe, as like a follow up. They're releasing like a Muppet Haunted Mansion, so it's a lot of like existing IP that they are
Right.
Muppifying, basically. But there was also like a show that they came out with about 5 years ago that was like an actual prime time show that was a mockumentary, and it
Yeah.
was like The Office.
It and that show is great. They
Yeah,
only they only had like one or two seasons, and it was genius. And
yeah,
they,
yeah, yeah. I've never watched an episode, but I've watched like compilations that are funny.
if you loved 30 Rock,
Hmm.
but I've never seen 30 Rock, but I know you have.
You've never
It's
seen 30 Rock?
I've never seen 30 Rock, not even a lick. Um,
Oh, Justin.
that's what this show is. It is like The Office. It is like that. It is, a workplace comedy kind of thing,
Hmm.
but Muppified. But it also feels like the original Muppet Show, where they're like putting on a show, and
It's a
Kermit
show
is.
about a show. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great. It's really genius the way they did it, and it was so good.
Yeah. I like these newer Muppet iterations. I like the newer movies that they've had, but there's something about these like 80s and 90s movies, almost in the way that like the sets are built and everything's kind of like crooked, and you can see it's very tactile. It's not clean or sharp lines or anything like that.
Yeah.
We talked about in like Little Shop of Horrors, our episode, how like there's some sets that look kind of grimy, but you still want to go there and like be there.
Oh yeah.
I want to go to all the sets in this movie. It looks like a theme park. It looks like It looks like they never shot a single scene in the outdoors, even though this entire movie takes place outdoors. It's all on like a soundstage.
Yeah, yeah, you can
And
tell.
then they have like the exterior ship shots that they use on like actual water. But I love how everything is kind of canted a little bit. Everything's a little bit zany. Everything's a
Yeah.
little bit off kilter.
Yeah, because
Um,
it's supposed to feel like, I guess, you're in a boat, but even still, like when they go to the office of like Fozzie's office or whatever,
mhm,
it's still like the walls feel like they're this way, and it's really wacky. But
mhm.
yeah, I would 100% love to go to a theme park based on Muppet Treasure Island.
Yeah, it's I guess it's like credit to like the Henson Company and stuff that they haven't like fully gone Disney yet, but like there's not really a Muppet experience that you can go and have from what I'm aware of. Like I think there's like a museum probably that you can go to, but it's not like the Muppets are like fully integrated into a theme park environment or anything like that.
Not a full theme park at, I think, Disney Hollywood Studios.
Hmm.
There's a section of that's dedicated to the Muppets. There's a Muppet ride and stuff like that. There's like a Rizzo the Rat pizza joint, and it's some pretty cool stuff down there.
I think they
Uh,
just stood the test of time. Like they belong to like
Us,
American culture first and foremost before they're even a Disney entity at this point.
absolutely, I totally
Um,
agree.
so like they're more ingrained in history than just being a Disney IP.
Yeah.
Um,
Before we close out and round out, I definitely want to touch on just the piracy of it
mhm,
all, the
mhm.
the the pirate culture and how it impacts children like us growing up, us millennials growing up, because there were definite pirate children, right?
Uh-huh.
There were kids who played pirate all the time, and there were kids who had a bunch of pirate toys all the time. Were
Mhm.
you one of those kids?
Um, Somewhat. So I told you the story about how there was a Halloween where my family just went full pirate. I've talked with you about how I secretly have like 80 brothers and sisters. I have six brothers and sisters. And so it's a household of nine. We're living in the middle of Atlanta, Georgia, in like the suburbs, basically. And we decided to like really go for it for the Halloween contest one year, completely deck out our house in like painted foam to make it look like a pirate ship. My dad's an artist, so like it actually looked good. And we're all decked out in like stripes and stuff. I told you, I think one of us was like a parrot on someone's shoulders if we were like small
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And so very themed, very strong family unit held together. We didn't win because the neighborhood was rigged from the start. They were
Ugh.
never going to give it to us because we were too alternative and cool. But I think we won the popular vote that year. Um, and so,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, piracy as a concept, pretty big growing up. I think it's like you're saying, like you're a kid and you get to pick like one of five industries that you can just focus your entire identity around.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a pirate or I'm an astronaut. Um,
Or cowboy or dinosaur or
yeah,
yeah, that kind of
yeah.
thing.
We tended to pick the more like tactile stuff rather than um, like I'm gonna have a sword before I have a gun, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna have a
Yeah.
lightsaber. I'm gonna
Mhm.
have a cutlass or whatever. So yeah, the idea of like piracy being a way to experience adulthood as a kid without fully becoming an adult is probably a way that a lot of kids relate to it, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wasn't a pirate kid, but I remember pirate kids being around me. I remember going specifically to like a pirate themed birthday party,
Uh huh.
and this kid had like he had a tree house already, but they outfitted it to be a pirate ship.
See,
And I
that's
remember
cool.
thinking, that's really cool, but I don't think I would want that like all the time. I was more like Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. Like that's
You
kind
just
of who I
you were
was.
a little sewer kid.
I was a sewer rat. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember friends, and it was always those were the more fun toys to play with, like the swords and the fake cannonballs and stuff
Hmm.
like that, and like swinging on the ropes, the rope bridges and stuff like that was way more fun than like playing with like fake toy guns, that kind of stuff.
I think pirate ships are just like so easily translatable to playgrounds in a way. Like a playground can become a pirate ship more easily than anything else, right?
Absolutely.
It's very much like you're defending things, you're sailing to places. It's the most applicable genre to
Yeah,
childhood, I
you're
would
just
say.
having an adventure,
Yeah.
And we talking about like Peter Pan and stuff, and watching movies like Hook a bunch growing up. You
Hook.
know that was another like early tactile memory for me of like, oh, piracy is actually kind of cool,
I
right?
want to go rob some people.
I want to steal.
Yeah.
I want to commit crime, but like get away with it.
I want to commit fraud and tax evasion.
How do I do that, Mom?
Um, all right, we are coming to the point in the episode where I offer you a challenge in the form of a game. Should we get into it and then have some final thoughts?
Yeah, let's get into it, and then we'll do our Jerry's final thoughts kind of a thing.
Jerry's final thoughts.
Yeah, Jerry
Um,
Springer.
so we we're on kind of a trend right now of slightly easier games. I feel like our games got more and more intense up until about April.
Yeah.
And then starting with our previous Labyrinth episode, we're kind of taking an easier approach here.
Hmm.
So the game I've come up with is not necessarily point related. You can't really win or lose. It's more just
Perfect.
like an experience, right? I'm going to walk you through it.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
definitely a participation trophy kind of kid. So yeah, let's do it.
it's called Muppet Takeover. Why don't you play me whatever fantastic monstrosity you've come up with this week?
So I was really excited because we knew we planned these episodes out, and you're like Muppet Treasure Island. I was like, I've never seen it. It's a pirate movie. Cool. I get to do a sea shanty. How fun! And uh, I admittedly had a little bit of help
Hmm.
from Chat GPT.
Oh my God.
Helped me to kickstart the lyrics. I wrote.
2023, y'all.
This is how we do it now on the UCU. Um, I still wrote the lyrics and the music and did everything, but yeah, this is fun. So check it out. So I let Ryan watch this last night before we went to bed, and she's like, "I have to implore that you do a vertical version to post on social media."
Oh yeah,
She's
Ryan will be somewhat taking over our social media going forward.
Yeah, she's going to be the social media coordinator because
Congrats to Ryan.
yeah, right. Yeah. Congrats, my dear. You get the promotion and everything that was promised. Because admittedly, Joe and I have kind of slacked off. But she's going to crack the whip. It's going to be great. The pirate whip. Here we go. Muppet Takeover. Here we go.
In a world of sails and salty air, where pirates roam without a care, the Muppet crew set sail so bold, seeking treasure and legends untold. Ahoy, mateys, we're sailing free, and oh look now, there's Tim Curry. Felt and flesh begin to blur. Yo ho ho, Muppet Takeover. Yo ho ho, Muppet Takeover. So avast, let lovers set sail today and join the Muppets on grand display. Pirate puns and laughs abound.
Heave-ho, scallywags, the treasure is found!
Shove off, mateys, we sail with glee. Can't believe the bad guy is Tim Curry. Flesh and felt and blood and fur. Yo ho ho, Muppet Takeover. Yo ho ho, Muppet Takeover.
Joe, I turned this into Muppets.
Justin, incredible. I'm going to need a PNG version of that. Justin created Muppet versions of us. That's perfect.
I don't know really who is who, and then we can kind of mess around with who's who. But yeah, I made us into
Vaguely
Muppets.
bearded, yeah.
I made us both into Muppets. That was Ryan's idea. She's like, you have to do that, and I was like, all right, done.
That's fantastic. Muppifying. We're going to post that. So let me talk to you about Muppet Takeover.
Yes.
This unfortunately has nothing to do with Muppet Treasure Island. So your entire theme song is ironically
waste.
unrelated.
Yeah.
So it was it was kind of like a Twitter thing that went around a few years back, talking about like picking movies or franchises, replacing every character except for one with a Muppet.
Yep.
And that's what I'm going to do as part of this game. So I'm going to give you 10 movies or movie franchises, and you're going to tell me which character you would leave as the only remaining non-Muppet character in it. Okay?
I love it.
Everyone else is replaced with a Muppet.
I love it. Ryan knew this was going to happen. This is amazing.
Oh, yeah. And then as just like an added little fun bonus, I will tell you the character that I picked, and we'll see how often we match up.
This is great. This is just a fun conversation.
So fun. It's bonding time. We'll celebrate how we're alike and our differences. Okay. So 10 movies in a row. You tell me which character gets to stay unmuppified.
Okay.
Starting with the obvious. The Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Everyone is a Muppet except Sean Bean.
Oh, that's so fun.
Because he's gone out of the first movie, and
He
then it's just all
dies
Muppet.
surrounded by Muppets crying.
Yeah.
I picked Gandalf because I want to see him hurting a bunch of Muppets, and I want to see him like towering over them.
Yeah, and then the scene where they wake up in Rivendell would be hilarious.
Just little tiny hobbits.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep it going. Pirates of the Caribbean.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Just based off of what you know.
Everyone is a Muppet except for Keira Knightley.
Okay, nice. So
Keira
she's
Knightley.
like full on kissing a Muppet and secretly doing it on a beach, even though they don't show it.
With a different Muppet. Yeah, it's great. Hilarious. And so I guess another piece to this too. So like, who would be Captain Jack Sparrow?
It'd be Muppet Captain Jack Sparrow. Oh,
I know,
so
but
you're thinking like who of the Muppets?
who of the Muppets?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would have to be like
Kermit, right? Or is Kermit more of the
what's the name of the drummer? Is it Monster?
animal?
Animal.
Oh yeah, that's better.
Monster. God. I picked Mr. Gibbs, who is the Jack Sparrow's first mate. The older guy.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3, Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. If I had to pick a movie, I guess we'll just go with the first one.
No, the whole franchise. You can do the whole franchise.
The whole franchise? Everyone except for Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid. Because he's kind of Muppety anyway. So everyone else is Muppets except for Hagrid. So like at the last movie, he has to carry a lifeless Kermit.
A tiny little Muppet. You think Kermit's Harry?
Yeah.
I did a little twist here. I picked Harry Potter as the human character.
You have Daniel Radcliffe the whole time. Okay.
I think it's just Daniel Radcliffe surrounded by Muppets in this magical world.
That'd be hilarious.
And then Kermit can be Gandalf. I mean, Dumbledore. God. Okay. Number 4. Fast.
Well, first of all, hold on. So then you have to watch Kermit like fall in slow motion.
Yeah,
to
he'd
his
die.
death. Hilarious.
Fozzie is Voldemort.
That's great.
No, Fozzie's Snape killing him.
Come on, Fozzie. Yeah, waka waka. That's part of the curse. Yeah.
Waka waka.
I hate.
Okay, number 4, Fast and Furious.
Right, Fast and Furious. I've only seen the first one once a long time ago. I don't know.
Based off of what you know, Fast and Furious.
Whoever Dom Toretto is. So not The Rock. What's his name?
You think Vin Diesel should be the human?
Vin Diesel is the human. Yeah.
I was close. I picked Michelle Rodriguez as the human. Who's kind of his love interest in that.
Okay. I didn't know if she was his sister.
No, his sister is Jordana Brewster.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Everyone's kissing everyone in those movies, and everyone has a sister.
It's about family, though.
Yeah. Okay. When Harry Met Sally.
Whew, this is fun because this is a UCU deep cut. Everyone's a Muppet except for what's his name? Joe Kirby? Or
Bruno Kirby.
Bruno Kirby. Yeah.
I went pretty similar. I picked Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, that's
Um,
perfect. That would be
you
great.
want the main couple to be Muppets in that case.
You want them to be Kermit and Piggy, obviously.
Oh God, yeah. Okay. You're gonna recognize the theme here. Pulp Fiction.
Okay, so the ones we do. Okay, Sam Jackson is the only human. Sam
Yeah.
Jackson. It is
Yeah,
the only right answer.
There's no way I'm taking away Sam Jackson from that movie.
No, he would.
Him delivering that monologue in the diner at the end to a Muppet while another Muppet holds up all the other diner patrons.
It's so funny.
So good.
I love it.
Doing a little switcheroo. The Princess Bride.
Okay, so I know that this has also been hotly contested in the Twitterverse. The one that makes me laugh the most, I think, is Andre the Giant. I think similar to Hagrid, right?
Just having him with
Just
a bunch of Muppets around him.
Tower over all the Muppets. Because I think the Dread Pirate is too easy.
You want the
princess.
main romantic couple to be of a similar species.
Yeah, like because you can easily see Kermit with the pirate,
Yeah.
sling, and like that's too good.
And Piggy's the bride. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went similar again. We got a friendship thing going. I went with Mandy Patinkin.
Yeah.
Just him battling Kermit in a sword fight would be just fun to watch.
It would be. Although I would now give that role to probably Pepe the Prawn.
Oh yes, the large prawn.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
Um,
You give my father, okay? It'd be great.
all right, number 8, The Social Network.
Everyone except Justin Timberlake's character as Sean Parker, because he gets to do a line of cocaine off of some Muppet's tummy at the end of the movie.
Good. That's the right answer. I said everyone except just one of the Winklevoss twins.
So it's still Armie Hammer, but like he has to play opposite of like his twin, and it's okay. So it would be Sam Eagle, right? Is his twin? Yeah.
It gets really like existential. All right, going all the way back. The Devil Wears Prada.
Ooh, man. See, because you really want Meryl Streep surrounded, but I think I have to go with. I got to go with Stanley Tucci.
I went with Tucci too.
Yeah, you got to go with Tucci.
You got to go with Tucci. Okay, last one, number 10. The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. Just for his reprisal, and he's familiar. Obviously, it's Michael Caine as Alfred.
Oh my God, yeah, that makes so much sense because he's the main guy in Christmas Carol. I did something similar. I went with Gary Oldman as the Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
But I think both are situations where it's these old guys dealing with Muppet shit all around them.
Yeah, just can't even believe it. Yeah. Yeah, like, I would have to be Fozzie, I guess, would be the Joker. Because he's the funny guy. You know?
think Kermit's still Batman?
Either that or Kermit is Commissioner Gordon and Gonzo's Batman.
I could see Gonzo Batman. Yeah.
Yeah, I would believe it. It's amazing.
I could also see Piggy Joker. Like that's a world that I could see happening.
Yeah, I don't want to see her blown up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow. Now I'm thinking like Fozzie Two-Face. There's so many ways that you can go about this.
Yeah, so don't forget, folks, to like, what is it? Like, subscribe, and
like, rate, review, subscribe.
Rate, review, subscribe, do all that, comment, and then who would you put in those movies? You know? Who would you change up and leave?
Tell us how you would play Muppet Takeover, UCU edition.
Absolutely.
Justin, Muppet Treasure Island. Any last thoughts?
It was such a treasure to be able to watch this movie, and I admittedly came to the Muppet party later in life, much to the chagrin of my wife. But we have since righted the ship, and we are raising our own new little Muppet fanatic in the house, the right way, as God intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all there is to it. I had such a blast with this movie, like I said multiple times, because I wasn't familiar with the story, so I was just as surprised as everyone else was in 1996 when this movie came out.
It's such a great time. I'm glad we got to have a little bit of a pirate corner, and I hope we keep the vibes going at some point with Treasure Planet, because that is something I really want you to watch.
Yeah, we'll definitely try and weasel in like a mini-sode in the coming months to kind of tack on a lot of these pieces that we've talked about over several episodes.
We have a lot of one-off ideas, yeah.
We do have some one-offs that we need to just connect the dots. So, real quick before we leave, so this is the end of the month. We're leaving Muppet Mayhem and we're getting into June. And June, you know what that means, kids? It's time for Pride Month.
Target,
Yeah, cowards.
not Target.
Not Target.
We can only watch movies that feature Target.
There are so few. It's Pride Month, so we're gonna get a little gay with it. We're gonna get some gay cinema up in
Get a
here.
little queer.
Get a little queer with it. So
I'll keep mine a secret. Why don't you preview yours?
So we originally were gonna do Interview with the Vampire, starring Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, because I was trying to come at it from like a bisexual point of view of like what's like a bisexual tenet movie, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
Turns out it another one that is just cemented is in the culture is obviously The Mummy, right?
That is known as like huge bisexual staple.
Absolutely. So I was trying to comb through the backlog of all the movies that you haven't seen that I have. I was like, Interview with the Vampire. That's great. That totally plays. But luck be a lady and thrust herself into our lap. The Plaza Theater in Atlanta gave us a shining star moment where they're showing a movie that Joe hasn't seen that is also queer cinema. It's great. It is Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan, starring Natalie Portman.
We're going to get horror this Pride Month. We're going to talk about scary mind shit.
Scary. It's going to be so good. And it's such a fun movie. And I'm glad we're going to go see it in person. Again, just for the vibes. And it's one of those movies that I saw it in theaters, and we'll talk about it. But like, it's just so unsettling to see it.
It's going to be a real culmination, again, of like a lot of our miniseries so far, because huge Oscar movie. We can talk about, the Portman of it all, the cuteness of it all.
The cutest. And then obviously we'll talk about that 70s show in and of itself there too. So yeah, that's what's coming up. Stay tuned. And then we'll be posting all these kinds of fun things now that we have a brand new, capable, way more invested social media manager.
She makes $120,000 a year at this job.
She is breaking us, y'all. Yeah. But it's worth it. It's worth it.
We need someone to manage this budget.
Yeah, next up we're going to hire a treasurer. Somebody.
All right, good times. Well, we will see you next time for Black Swan.
Take it easy, y'all. And may the Muppets be with you.
Muppets out.